What is up, Heights? So good to see you this morning. So good to be here with you. As David said, we are in a series that is called Seasons, and we go through different seasons. I don't know if you remember a couple months ago, I had preached and I was talking about the greatest candy that ever existed. And it's a Reese's, but not just any Reese's. It's those seasonal ones that come out for that are Christmas trees, right? Or that come out that are Easter eggs. And the ratio of chocolate to peanut butter, I'm just telling you, it'll change your life, okay? It'll change your life. And you, being the generous church that you are, have done a great job of supplying me with the greatest candy on earth. And so I'm in a season right now where I'm powered by Reese's, all right? Some of you might have noticed I've been powered by Reese's. It's a great season. I literally wrote this message and somebody walked in my office and was like, "Here you go, Pastor Todd." And I was like, "Bless your soul." It was amazing. It was amazing, man. But we're all in different seasons of life. And I would say right now for me, actually, the season I'm in is really just characterized by kids. More specifically, I'm in a season of diapers. We've been in a season of diapers for the last almost 11 years. Our kids are spaced out just enough to where I have changed more diapers than I ever want to see in an entire lifetime. When my wife and I first had our first kids, they ended up being twins, and I'd never changed a diaper before in my life. And then all of a sudden, I had double duty. Literally, come on now. That's a punny dad joke right there. Somebody give it to me. Come on, I know you'd like that. All right, that's good. Listen, but we have different seasons in our life, and I don't know what season you're in, but if you've been here over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about the seasons that we go through. We've been talking about the first week we said, hey, you got to identify what season you're in to know what action is required in that season. You got to be able to say, hey, here's where I'm at, so now I know what God needs me to do in this season. Then we talked about the next season that we went over is a season of waiting. All right, maybe you're in that season of waiting and you're going, I'm just waiting on God to come through. And you've been going through the motions of going, God, when are you going to show up? God, you've promised this. And sometimes we're tempted to take it into our own hands instead of trust God in the season of waiting. And last week we talked about a season of doubt. Or maybe you've gone through a season of doubt. Maybe you're in a season of doubt and you're going, I just got doubts. I got questions. And God can handle those doubts. He can handle your questions, but we got to be able to wrestle with those in community, with people around us that are going to point us to Him. And this week we're talking about celebration. We're talking about being in a season where we can celebrate. And celebration is something that's exciting. Listen, I'm going to celebrate when I'm out of diaper season, all right? Listen, we're going to throw a party and you're all invited. It's going to be amazing. There's some people that are just really good at celebrating. You ever been around a person who's just good at celebration? My Aunt Paula, man, anytime we had anything good in life, we had to save it up to tell her because we knew she'd celebrate with us. Right? She would scream, and she had this scream that as soon as we would tell her any excitement in our life, you could hear her screaming. It was amazing. Right? You've been around those people before. My 5-year-old daughter, she can celebrate anything. She's like, Dad, let's celebrate. I found a roly-poly. I'm like, you get that out of the house right now. Right? She can celebrate. Everything's a joyful opportunity for her. She's good at celebrating. But listen, whatever season you're in, there's room for celebration. You don't have to be in a season of celebration to celebrate. Whatever season you're in, there's room for celebration. It says in Philippians 4, verse 4, rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Not rejoice in the Lord sometimes, not rejoice in the Lord just when it seems like a joyful time. He's saying, hey, celebrate often. Rejoice in the Lord always. And he says, if you didn't get it, I'll say it again. Rejoice, come on, celebrate. Right? He's saying this is important. See, I think oftentimes when we think of God or we think of the church, we don't think of celebration. Yeah, church and God, that's one thing, but celebration is different. It's not that we don't know how to celebrate. Oh, we know how to celebrate. Right, we celebrate birthdays. Some of you in here, you're like divas. You don't celebrate birthdays, you celebrate birth month. You know what I'm saying? Your birthday's on like the 30th, but on the 1st, you're like, it's my birth month. And everyone's supposed to you guys know how to celebrate, right? Some of you, we can celebrate Christmas. Some of you think it's a 3-month celebration instead of the 1 month that God intended. That's okay, but you know how to celebrate. We celebrate Christmas. We can celebrate our sports teams. Right? We know how to celebrate our sports teams. Listen, Go Niners, baby. Go Niners. I'm just saying, we got a game today. Okay, no, listen, no haters. This is the house of the Lord in here, all right? We know how to celebrate when things happen. We get excited. We can party. We know how to celebrate. But oftentimes, when it comes to God or the church, we go, that's different. Celebration is different. It belongs in all these other categories in our life. But when it comes to God, we kind of forget to celebrate. But what we don't know is that celebration itself is actually God's idea. God is the one that created this idea of celebration. We look in the Old Testament, and if we look at God's people, we talk a lot about these rhythms that God put in place for his people. We talk about the rhythm of giving, the rhythm of generosity. We say this is an ancient rhythm that God put in place for the betterment of his people. There was ancient rhythms that he put in place for celebration as well. The Israelite people were commanded. It wasn't a suggestion. It was hey, this is something that you have to do. It's not an option. It's a rhythm that we're baking in to your culture. Many, many days of celebration. In fact, 3 specific festivals that were pilgrimage festivals, which means that they had to travel and they had to go to a place where they would celebrate for a week or weeks at a time. 3 different ones where they had to disrupt their normal life and bake in rhythms of celebration for the Passover festival to celebrate what God had done leading them out of Egypt. For the Feast of Weeks, or this idea of Pentecost where they would celebrate and there was a festival that they would travel to. The Feast of Booths or of Tabernacles is what it's called. And these were all pilgrimage festivals in addition to the days that were celebration days that were set aside for celebration. Right, that there's rhythms that God had baked in for his people, understanding the importance of celebration in their life, understanding the importance of celebration as they continued to worship him and to see God for who he is. And it's not just Old Testament. We see this in the New Testament many times. Throughout the New Testament, we see these instances of celebration. We see it in Luke 15. In Luke 15, this passage, Jesus is hanging out and the Pharisees, the religious people of the day, came up and they started questioning him to why he's hanging out with sinners. Like, Jesus, why are you hanging out with these sinners? You're a religious person. You're supposed to be good, not hanging out with sinners. And Jesus, as he likes to do, he starts telling them a story then for his answer. And he tells them these stories about lost things. And the point of these stories is that lost things, lost people matter to God. That's the point of these stories. But within the point of this story, we see some things that point to this idea of celebration. Luke 15, verse 8, it says this, or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Doesn't she light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me. I have found my lost coin. In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of angels of God over one sinner who repents. See, this is about finding lost people, but we see very, very clearly they didn't have to explain this idea of celebration. She called people and she said, let's celebrate. And I think it's important what we see here is that celebration happens in heaven. We think it's our idea. We think that we as humans stumbled on this idea of celebration. There's celebration that happens in heaven. Can you imagine a heaven party? Right? Like we think we figured it out here. It's perfect in heaven. Everything's amazing. They don't have anything that's fallen. We live in a fallen world. They're perfect. Their parties were probably insane. Their parties are amazing. I can imagine it. All right, listen, I'm just saying, if Jesus turned water into wine on earth, in heaven, they probably partying with tequila. I'm just saying. Hey, that was a joke. I'm just kidding. I needed to make this very clear. That was a joke. So if you have a complaint about that, you can email Pastor Bob at heightschurch.com, all right? I'm just kidding. But for real, the party in heaven, angels, hundreds of thousands of angels just singing glory to God, proclaiming God. Party in heaven sounds amazing. It's not our idea. There's party that happens in heaven. Jesus continues, and as Jesus is going on in this story, he talks about this son who was asked for his inheritance. He asked for an inheritance early. He said, I want to break away from the family and I want to do my own thing. And he took his inheritance and he ran off and he squandered it. He spent it on anything and everything. And he got rid of his money and he was at the lowest point in his life. He said, I think I need to go back to my father. And as he heads back to his father sees him on a long way off and he's ready to accept whatever punishment his father has for him. But again, this passage is about God's understanding of accepting the people that have wandered away, accepting the lost people. But what we see in here is the response from the father, starting in verse 22. It says, but the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. He said, let's celebrate. Celebration is something that we do. It's normal. And he goes, this is important because this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And it says, so they begin to celebrate. See, we see this idea of celebration over and over and over. And so what is it that we see in this passage? What is worth celebrating? What is it that they say, let's celebrate this? Life change is worth celebrating. We celebrate because of life change, right? When somebody's life has been changed because Jesus came into their life and changed the direction of their life, that is incredible. That is worth celebrating. I always think it's so funny when someone says that they have a boring testimony. When people, I have a boring testimony. Listen, going from death into life, Jesus changing your life from a course headed to hell and separation from God forever to life in his presence for eternity, that is not boring. There is nothing boring about that, church. That is life change that is worth celebrating no matter who you are, no matter what you've done. We have so much life change to celebrate. We have stories that we could go over all day within our church of people whose lives have changed, and we can celebrate that. We have stories of life change specifically in our youth ministry. A couple months ago, we had a youth worship night, and it was a worship night where students came together and were worshiping God. And as this night was happening, our middle school director, Sarah, she really felt God was putting on her heart to go talk to the specific young lady that was there, a middle school student. So she waited another song, and she was listening, and God was saying, hey, no, you need to go talk to her. You need to go pray with her. So she went over to this young lady and she started praying with her, and this young lady immediately just started crying. And as she was praying with her, another leader in the ministry, she walked over, another adult leader, and she's crying and she's saying, God is telling me I need to pray for her as well. And started praying for this young lady, and this young lady started opening up and telling them some of the things that were going on in her life, some of the difficulties, some of the difficult times that she was going through, and saying, I need something to have hope in. And they started talking to her about the hope that's found in Jesus in this moment. And as the weeks went on, as the months went on, the students saw these leaders, not just a one-time deal, but they saw them continually to show up in her life, continuing to pour into her, continuing to love her. And step by step, this girl has continued to take steps toward God. She has met Jesus, and she's continued to take steps week by week towards him. And we have life change that is happening. And this is one example of so many that are happening. Our high school students, they went to winter camp 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, they went to winter camp, and so many commitments were made for Jesus, but 6 students, many of which are being baptized this weekend, many of which we get to celebrate through baptism, have made a commitment and have sat down with either a youth pastor, Austin, or with other youth leaders, and have talked about this commitment, saying, hey, I'm taking a stand for Jesus and I'm changing my life. And there's life change happening. And our youth leaders are going, hey, listen, we're not going into this blind. We're not going into this to tell you that it's all going to be great and it's all going to be easy. They say, listen, you're choosing the harder road. Because a high school student standing up in their schools today and saying, I want to stand for Jesus, is not an easy thing to do. And we're not going to lie to our students about that. We're going to say, hey, you are choosing the road less traveled. And each one of those students said, I know what I'm choosing, but I'm willing to take a step and a stand for Jesus. Listen, we have life change that is happening within the walls of our church, and life change is worth celebrating. We celebrate life change. We see that in this passage. The reason they threw these parties was because of the lost thing was found, because life change happened. We also see in this passage that celebration is communal. You see, the first thing when this lady finds her lost coin, what does she do? She calls in all of her friends and neighbors and says, hey, come celebrate with me. Come celebrate with me. She calls in her friends and neighbors. What does he do when his son returns? He kills the fattened calf and has a feast with all of his friends and neighbors. We don't want to celebrate in silos. We want to celebrate together as a church. It happens communal. We have an opportunity to celebrate. When we do celebration weekends, you might be going, okay, celebration weekend, what is that all about? This is what it's about, is that we as the family of God get to come together and get to celebrate together the life change that's happening. Right, at Heights Church, we have some things that guide us as far as, hey, this is what we're for. We are for Jesus. If you were here a couple years ago, we had sweatshirts made that said we are for people. We're for people. One of the things that we're for here at Heights is we're for celebration. We want to be a church that's marked by celebration, and here's why. Because we will celebrate often the things that God is doing. We will create spaces for us to acknowledge the works that he's doing. We will collect stories. We will do the things that are necessary to throw a party for the right things when we see them. We want to mimic the celebration that we see throughout Scripture that God baked into these rhythms for these people. We want to celebrate. But maybe you're sitting in here and you're going, okay, this sounds great, but I'm just not in a season of celebration right now. I'm just not in a season of celebration. That was me this week. I don't know why God does this, but he always wants me to live a message before I preach it. Before I stand in front of the church and tell you guys, hey, we're going to celebrate. I have a week where I go, man, I don't know if I could see anything worth celebrating. I spent this last week going, man, I'm really frustrated with this, and then I had a list of things in my life that I'm going, man, I don't know that I can celebrate. I don't know that I can even do this message. And I went to one of the pastors, Pastor Ben at our church, and I sat with him. I said, Ben, I don't even know if I can preach this message this week, and I just don't feel like there's anything to celebrate. He goes, listen, sometimes you have to flip the script. Because sometimes the things that we see, we're looking at it one way, and we need to flip the script. What I mean is this. I was driving my kids to school this last week, and it was raining, and I drive what I like to call a youth pastor Ferrari, okay? It has nothing to do with a Ferrari at all, but it's really like the cool thing for youth pastors. It's about a 15-year-old Ford Focus that's missing a hubcap. I got a cracked windshield. My radio doesn't work, and neither of the windows roll down, okay? My tires are a little bald as well. And I'm driving my kids to school, and it's in the rain, and we're slipping a little bit, and I'm in this spot where I'm like, man, this is terrible. This is awful. This is not a good place to be. I'm afraid for the safety of my kids and my family, and why can't I have a better vehicle and all these things? And then I stopped for a second. And in the midst of that moment, that was the script in front of me, but I had to flip the script and go, wait a second. My kids aren't walking to school in the rain. See, sometimes we look at stuff and we go, man, my heating bill is just so big and I don't know how I'm going to handle this. But the truth is, you live in a house with heat. And sometimes when our baby's crying in the middle of the night and we're like, what do we do? I can't do this anymore. And we're losing our mind because they're crying, when we stop and we go, but they have some really healthy lungs. And sometimes when everything in our life is going bad and we're in this spot where we're going, all we see in the script is really negative things, we have to flip the script. Because there's always an opportunity for celebration. Whatever season you're in, there's an opportunity for celebration. I've been listening to this song lately by a Christian artist named Brandon Lake, and the name of the song is Praise You Anywhere. And here's the lyrics to this song. It says, sometimes you got to dance through the darkness, sing through the fire, praise when it don't make sense. Sometimes you got to stare down the giant and worship from the lion's den. Listen, I want to celebrate in our church, in the dark moments. We have a care department that cares about people, that is able to show up for them in their darkest moments, that is able to, in a place of grief, connect them to ongoing ministry that can help them heal through Jesus Christ. We have a trauma reboot ministry that is focusing on people that have been through trauma. We have a grief share ministry that's helping people that are in the process of grieving or going through grief of loss. And in that moment, in the dark moments where we go, man, this isn't a season of celebration for these people. This isn't a season of celebration. We're able to celebrate because we're able to flip the script and see we are helping people find Jesus. That's celebration. That's celebration worthy. That's something as a church that we come together and we call our friends and neighbor and go, listen, we can celebrate because this is what God is doing. And so why celebrate? If you're going, okay, I get it. I need to push through. Why is this so important though? Why was this something that God baked into rhythms for his people? If you're a note taker, write this down. The first is this: we celebrate to align our hearts with the gratitude God deserves. We celebrate to align our hearts with the gratitude that God deserves because God deserves our gratitude, but sometimes our hearts are not in a place to give it. He's always worthy of our praise, but sometimes we're not there. It says in Psalm 150, let everything that has breath praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Let everything that has breath praise the Lord. Not everything that just feels good about the breath that they have. If you have breath, praise the Lord. We align our hearts with the gratitude that God deserves. See, when you look for ways to celebrate, when you look for ways to celebrate what God has done, you start seeing through that lens in different areas of your life. This year, I've started this new thing that I've started every morning with praying with just 2 minutes specifically about praising God for who he is. God, you are good. God, you're so wonderful. God, I praise that you are all powerful, and just giving God the praise that he deserves in just 2 minutes, that's it. And it's so hard because in 2 minutes, my mind can wander in 500 different ways. But for 2 minutes, all I focus on is that. And I don't move into any other area of prayer. Don't pray for anything else, just focusing on who God is. And what I've seen is that all throughout the day, I am way more aware of the celebrations of how good our God is in every other area of life. I'm seeing him everywhere else. It says in the book of Revelation, it describes these beasts that are surrounding the throne of God, and these beasts are covered in eyeballs. They're covered in eyes. Listen, if you think the Bible's boring, read Revelation. And don't ask me what it means, because I got no clue. But listen, these beasts are covered in eyeballs. They're covered in eyeballs, their entire body, and they're surrounding the throne of God, and these beasts all day long, 24 hours a day, except there's no time in heaven, so I don't know what the time is, but constantly what they're doing is they're saying, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. That's all they're saying over and over and over. And what I see in this is that these beasts that are just full of eyeballs, why do they have so many eyes? Because when their eyes are looking at God, all they can say is, holy, holy, holy is he. When our eyes are looking for celebration, when our eyes are looking for opportunities, what we're doing is we're aligning our heart with the gratitude that God already deserves. He already deserves this gratitude, but when we align our heart with that gratitude by looking for celebrations, we're able to find celebrations. We're able to see the goodness of God in so many different ways, even when we're not in a season of celebration. Man, I don't know about you, but I am so grateful to God. I'm so thankful to God for a church that doesn't just care about the people inside our walls. We have a church that cares about our community. We have ministries that are constantly thinking, hey, how do we care for our community? We launched an entire location that's not just open one day a week for church, but it's open every single day to talk about, hey, listen, we care about our community in every way possible. I'm thankful for a church that doesn't just care about our community close to us, but cares about our community across the world. We just sent a team to the Dominican Republic. And we had a team that came back with amazing stories of what God has done and decided, hey, we got to do this again. And they're going back again twice this year. Sending even more people to say, hey, we want to care about people across the world. We want to care about everyone. I'm thankful that we have a church that cares about our families, that invests in our families and our next generation. I'm thankful for a church that cares about every generation. Through our Epic ministry, we say, listen, we don't care what stage of life you're in. You're valuable to God and you're valuable to us, and we want to pour into you. Listen, I'm thankful for God's vision for us at a church. And when we start recognizing these things that we take for granted and they happen all the time, what we're doing is we're aligning our hearts with the gratitude that God deserves. Why do we do it? Number 2, write this down. We celebrate what God has done, not what we do. This isn't about us. All right, there's some churches that it is about them and they want to say, hey, look at how good we are. Look how awesome we are. But when we celebrate people, when we celebrate ministries, it's not about us. It's about God. We're saying this is what God has done. Listen, all of us, we're just faithful servants. We're nobody special. We're just faithful servants. We want to celebrate what God has done. It says in 2 Corinthians 4, verse 7, we now have this light shining in our hearts, but we ourselves are like fragile clay jars containing this great treasure. This makes it clear that our great power is from God, not from ourselves. It's not from us. We don't have any power. We're fragile clay jars. That's all we are. It's God's power. God can move through us as vessels. And God does that. God's done that with so many people. We could stand up here all day and talk about the people in this church that God has moved through in mighty ways to affect our community, to affect our church, to affect everyone around us. And God has done that. People like Jim and Jody Fuller. People who decided as a math teacher and as a nurse that they wanted to do more with the gifts that God has given them. People who have decided that they were going to be full-time missionaries with YWAM, but every time that they're back in the area, they plug right into our kids ministry, right into our youth ministry, serving with our students. They can be found at basketball games. They can be found doing math tutoring. They can be found doing everything that they possibly can to pour into the people around them because they understood that they had to die to themselves to serve others. We can celebrate people in our church that have said, you know what? I know what I want, but instead I'm going to show up and I'm going to serve faithfully. Not serve the church, serve God through the church with the people around us. We celebrate his provision. We celebrate his provision. Listen, God provides. God provides. We're going through a situation right now in my life where we're going to have to move out of our house pretty soon, and we don't know where we're going to land next. And it's become a topic of conversation for anyone that knows me is going, hey, how are you feeling about this? How are you doing? And I can genuinely say, not because of myself or anything that I have, I can genuinely say I have so much peace about it. I have no clue where we're going to live. I don't know what's going to happen. But I have peace because God has always provided. God has always been faithful. And I know that he'll be faithful again. God provides. God's provided in so many ways for this church. It's incredible. If you guys don't know, we launched a preschool over in Prescott Valley at our Park Collective location called Upside Preschool. And we got the preschool going and we started it. And the person who got it going and got it started, her and her family moved. We're going to move out of state. And she tells us, hey, we're going to move. We're going to leave. And we're going, what are we going to do? We got this preschool started. We can't just shut it down. And God's like, listen, don't worry. I've been providing. And God provided a lady who's been in our church for a long time, who served faithfully. And Amy Bentner, who's been prepared with her background in education, God was working on her heart. God was working on her heart so that when we were going, man, what are we going to do? She said, hey, I'm here. I got this. And she stepped in as our new preschool director. And we haven't skipped a beat. We've moved forward. We're pushing forward the vision that God has because God provided before we even knew we needed some provision. God put on the hearts of two of the guys in our church, Ken and Alan. Ken being a retired law enforcement, Alan working in finance. He put it on their heart and started stirring in them, hey, what can you do? What can you do for our church? How can you continue to help them when it comes to safety? And so they took it upon themselves to figure out how to get grants for our safety team, for our safety equipment. And they did all of the work to get the grants for hundreds of thousands of dollars of safety equipment at both of our locations. Cameras and locks and all the things that we sit here and we are able to feel safe because of what the work that they've done. And I can tell you right now that through their work, through those cameras, through the locks, through the things that they provided, it has protected our church and it has protected our community many, many times. I can't tell you the details of how or why, but what I can tell you is that over and over, God provided through different avenues, through different people stepping out. We celebrate God's provision. Last is this, write this down. We celebrate salvation. Why are we doing this? Why do we celebrate? Why do we make this a big deal? Why are we here to celebrate? Why are we talking an entire weekend about celebrating? Because we have a God that looked down on earth and saw the human problem that we had of separation from him forever because of our sin. And And he did not turn his back on us. He sent his only son to die for us. He sent his only son to a cross, to stretch out his arms, to be nailed to a cross, to take the sin of the world, to take every bit of wrong that you have done on himself and pay the price for your sins, to make a way for you to have a relationship with God. And that is so worth celebrating. Come on, can somebody get excited about salvation today? Salvation is here. Jesus came. He paid the price. There is a bloodstained cross, and you are not on it because he rose from the grave, celebrating that, and we can celebrate that. We have an opportunity to celebrate that today. In a second, we are going to celebrate baptisms. We have two people that we can celebrate life change because they crossed from death into life. We get to celebrate as a church. Listen, church, never become calloused to the amazing works of God. Sometimes we can gloss over them. We can forget about them. We can go, oh, they're just happening around us. Listen, never become calloused to the amazing works of God. We can see them in every season. Whatever season that you're in, whatever season you might find yourself in, there is reason to celebrate. Celebrate what God is doing. And right now we get to celebrate baptisms. We get to celebrate baptisms, and listen, church, this is where we get to come alive. Come on now, I talked about it for 30 minutes and you're already sick of hearing me talk. We get to celebrate now. And so what's gonna happen as these people step in these waters of baptism before us that symbolize the life change that we're willing to celebrate, we're gonna get excited. We're gonna throw them a party. Every time they come out of that water, they are gonna be met with the cheers of this church because they're gonna remember forever the day that they made their faith public to say, I stand for Jesus. And the life change that's represented in this tub right now is one that you won't fully know, but they know, and we get to celebrate it together. So church, we're gonna celebrate right now as she hops in this water.